Bonjour and welcome viewers and students to Let's Speak French, Parlons Français. These lessons on basic French are short and easy, and if you follow the program regularly, I can guarantee you that very soon you will be able to speak and understand French quite easily. The previous class focused on prepositions of position. In today's class, we are going to learn about contracted articles. This lesson has been divided into 3 sections. In the first section, I will explain what a contracted article is and what its various forms are. In the next section, I'll show you a few contexts where contracted articles are used. In this section, I'll also present a few more prepositions of position. And in the third section, I'll provide a text to revise what we learnt in today's class. In this lesson, I will introduce words related to food and beverages. Contraction is a grammatical phenomenon that occurs when 2 words combine into one. In the English language, a contraction occurs when 1 or more letters are dropped and replaced with an apostrophe. We see this occur between a pronoun and a verb, or a verb and a word not. For example, I am happy becomes I am happy, while he cannot come becomes he can't come. Since in English contractions indicate informality, their use is optional. In French, however, contractions are required regardless of the register being used when speaking or writing. As you will soon learn, the concept of contraction is slightly different in French. There are many different contexts that call for a contraction, and unlike English, contractions in French do not only occur between a pronoun and a verb, but also between an article and a noun, or a preposition and an article. French contractions can be categorized into 3 different groups. In this section, I will present these different types of contractions. Definite articles contract in 2 different cases. We have already come across one of them when learning about articles in the previous chapter. We learnt that le and la contract to l apostrophe when the noun that follows begins with a vowel or a mute h. The French equivalence of the egg is l'œuf and not le œuf. Similarly, we say l'huile and not la huile when referring to the oil. L apostrophe is therefore a contraction of le or la. Here's a table that displays the contraction applicable to the definite articles. Le œuf contracts to l'œuf. Le hôtel contracts to l'hôtel. La orange contracts to l'orange. La huile contracts to l'huile. The 4 examples displayed on the table show that when the definite articles le and la are followed by nouns that either begin with a vowel or a mute h, the article contracts to l apostrophe. Please note that the contraction occurs only with definite articles and never with the indefinite article une. The second case when definite articles contract occurs when le and les are preceded by the prepositions a and the. Both these articles can have various meanings. A can mean at, in or to, while the can mean about, from or of. First, let me show you the contractions, then I'll make the sentences to illustrate how each contraction takes place in a sentence. This table displays the contractions applicable to the definite articles that are preceded by the prepositions a and the. As you can see, the preposition a plus le contracts to o. The preposition a plus le contracts to o. The preposition de plus le contracts to du, and the preposition de plus le contracts to de. AU and AUX are both pronounced as O, but AU precedes a singular noun while AUX precedes a plural noun. Now let's see how these are used in a sentence. Je demande à la chef cuisinière les ingrédients de la sauce. The English equivalent of this sentence is, I ask the chef the ingredients of the sauce. In this sentence, there isn't any contraction because both the prepositions a and the are followed by a feminine noun. If you remember the previous lesson, I told you that with prepositions, there are cases where a preposition is needed in French, where none is used in English and vice versa. In the English sentence, you don't find the words to or of, although these are the meanings of a and de in the French sentence. The next sentence is, Le père des enfants demande au serveur d'apporter l'addition. This sentence translates as, the children's father asks the waiter to bring the bill. Here, DES is the contracted form of le père de les enfants, while AU is the contracted form of demande à plus le serveur. The third sentence that demonstrates the contraction of articles after a preposition is, la serveuse donne le menu au client et décrit le plat du jour. The English equivalent is, the waitress gives the customers the menu and describes the specially prepared dish of the day. In this sentence, AUX is the contracted form of donne à plus les clients, while du is the contracted form of le plat de plus le jour. Before proceeding to the second group of French contractions, let me review the contractions of definite articles. Definite articles can contract for two different reasons. The first case is when a noun beginning with a vowel or a mute H follows the article le and la. The final letter of the article is dropped and replaced by an apostrophe. This contraction, however, is applicable only to definite articles. The second case when definite articles contract occurs when the preposition a and the precede the article. In such cases, only the articles le and le contract, but not la. De plus le contracts to du, and de plus le contracts to de, and a plus le contracts to o, while a plus le contracts to o with an x. Both AU and AUX have the same pronunciation, but AU precedes a singular noun while AUX precedes a plural noun. The second group of contractions transpires when two-lettered words ending with a mute E are followed by a vowel or a mute H. This type of contraction stems from a typically French grammatical rule that is also responsible for the concepts of elision and liaison. Here's a table that displays a few of these contractions. Je plus arrive contracts to j'arrive, which means I arrive. Je plus habite contracts to j'habite, which means I live. Je me plus appelle contracts to je m'appelle, which means my name is. Je me plus habille contracts to je m'habille, which means I put on clothes. Je ne plus ai pas contracts to je n'ai pas, which means I don't have. Il se plus appelle contracts to il s'appelle, and it means his name is. Il se plus habille contracts to il s'habille, he puts on clothes. Tu te plus appelles contracts to tu t'appelles, which means your name is. Tu te plus habilles contracts to tu t'habilles, which means you put on clothes. As you can see, je, me, ne, se and te are all two-lettered words that end with the mute e. The definite article le and the preposition de also fall in this category of contractions. The third group of contraction is known as contraction figée in French. In English, this term translates as fixed contractions. What is meant by fixed is that the meaning of the expressions does not correspond to the meaning of the two words that compose it. Moreover, under no circumstances can these two words be adjacently placed, because it would be grammatically incorrect. For example, say, which means it is the contraction of se plus a. In the second chapter, we learned that se is a demonstrative adjective, while a is the third person singular form of the verb être. Grammatically, an adjective cannot be on its own. It is always accompanied by a noun. But since say is a fixed contraction, this violation is permitted. Here's a table of a few fixed contractions. Se plus a contracts to say, it means it is. De plus après contracts to d'après, it means according to. De plus habitude contracts to d'habitude, which means usually. Si plus il contracts to s'il. Tu te plus habilles contracts to tu t'habilles, which means you put on clothes. In the first section, I only presented the three types of contractions of the French language. In this section of the lesson, I'll show you how to use the contractions. In the previous lesson, we learnt a few prepositions of possession. Now I'll show you a couple more of such prepositions. Unlike chez, dans, derrière, devant, entre, sous and sur, these prepositions are composed of 2 or 3 words, and each of these prepositions end with the word de. Près de, à côté de, en face de, loin de, au milieu de. Since a contraction always occurs with the word the, when the word following is a masculine or a plural noun, these 5 prepositions always require a contraction. I'll illustrate each one with an example. Le restaurateur est debout près du sommelier. The English equivalent of this sentence is, the restaurant owner is standing beside the sommelier. If we change sommelier to plural, then the French sentence would be, le restaurateur est debout près des sommeliers. In the next sentence, I'll teach you two more prepositions. La cuillère est à côté de la fourchette, mais loin du couteau. This sentence translates as the spoon is next to the fork but far from the knife. In this sentence, à côté de signifies next to and loin de means far from. We notice à côté de does not contract because the following word is feminine, but loin de changes to loin du because couteau is a masculine word. Next, I'll show you how en face de is used. En face de means in front of. Le bistrot se trouve en face du café. This sentence translates as the pub is located in front of the cafe. If we replace cafe with pizzeria, then the preposition would not contract and it would be le bistrot se trouve en face de la pizzeria. The English equivalent of this sentence would be the pub is located in front of the pizzeria. Let's now look at the last preposition of location that is included in this lesson. Au milieu de means in the center of. Let's consider the following sentence. Le pâtissier verse le glaçage au milieu du gâteau. The English equivalence of this sentence is the pastry chef pours the icing in the middle of the cake. If we pluralize the noun cake and modify the sentence to the pastry chef pours the icing in the middle of the cakes, the French equivalent would be le pâtissier verse le glaçage au milieu des gâteaux. In French, there are various types of articles, among which are included partitive articles. These articles are fundamentally contracted articles, but which are used specifically to indicate an unknown quantity of something, usually food, drink, or qualities in a person. In English, these articles can be roughly translated as some, as in the question, would you like some tea or coffee? In this question, the word some could imply a cup, a mug, or even a pot of tea or coffee. If in this question the word some were to be omitted, then the question, would you like tea or coffee, is equally correct. But in French, one needs to accompany the noun with an article. Moreover, this article must express a vague and unspecified quantity. So that is when partitive articles are used. This table displays the 4 inflected forms of partitive articles: du, de la, de l'apostrophe and des. I'll take up each partitive article separately and illustrate them through sentences. Let's begin with the above question. The French translation of would you like some tea or coffee is tu veux du thé ou du café? The partitive article du precedes thé and café because both nouns are masculine. Let me give you another example with a human trait. Courage is a quality that cannot be measured. When talking about realizing a particularly hazardous feat, one can exclaim, that requires courage. That requires some courage is equally acceptable. The French equivalent would be ceci demande du courage. In the French sentence, du indicates a vague and unspecified amount of courage because, like all human qualities, courage cannot be measured. If we were to replace courage with patience, this sentence would be ceci demande de la patience. The partitive article de la precedes the word patience because this human trait is a feminine word. The same holds true for food and drinks. I buy flour. In French, we would translate this sentence as J'achète de la farine. If we specify the amount of flour that is bought, the partitive article will be removed. J'achète 5 kilos de farine, which translates as I buy 5 kg of flour. In these two contexts, that is, when talking about human qualities and food and drink, the partitive article the plus L apostrophe precedes a noun that begins with a vowel or a mute H. Elle a de l'humilité translate as she has humility, and elle ajoute de l'huile translate as she adds oil or she adds some oil. And they is the partitive article that precedes any plural noun. Let's consider the sentence, I go to the market to buy apples. Apple is a countable object, but when you choose not to count or specify a certain amount or number of a drink or food, you can use the partitive article. The French translation is Je vais au marché pour acheter des pommes. In French, there are certain verbs that are always followed by the or a. These prepositions naturally contract when the following noun is masculine or plural. Aller is one such verb. Aller means to go. This verb is always followed by the preposition a. So if we say we are going to the restaurant, the French translation would be Nous allons au restaurant. We are going to the bakery, it would be Nous allons à la boulangerie, because boulangerie is a feminine word. And if we say we are going to the United States, the French translation would be Nous allons aux États-Unis. In this third section of the lesson, we'll review what we learned today. The following text contains many contracted articles. I'm going to slowly read out the text so that you can understand how contracted articles are used in French. Nous allons à l'épicerie du coin pour acheter des provisions. Maman achète 2 bouteilles d'huile, une motte de beurre, du sucre, du sel, du lait et un pot de confiture. Elle prend aussi un cajot d'orange. Ensuite, nous allons au marché aux poissons qui se trouve en face de l'épicerie pour acheter des fruits de mer. The translation of this text is, we go to the grocery store at the corner to buy provisions. Mother buys 2 bottles of oil, a slab of butter, some sugar, salt, milk, and a bottle of jam. She also takes a crate of oranges. Then we go to the fish market, which is located in front of the grocery store, to buy seafood. With this, we come to the end of our third lesson. This lesson was divided into 3 parts. In the first part, we learned what a contracted article is and what its various forms are. In the second part, we learned a few contexts where contracted articles are used. And finally, in the third part, we summarized today's lesson by studying a text on contracted articles. I hope you enjoyed today's session. In the next class, we'll learn tonic pronouns. I hope to see you in the next class. Thank you. À bientôt. See you soon.